Hey guys, welcome to today's video. So as you can see from the title, we're going to get very nitty-gritty and detailed, and I'm hopefully going to be able to help someone with this video. But I get a lot of questions and comments and messages asking me about how someone can transition into the entertainment industry and what they need to do. And I have made very similar videos in the past, but I think maybe they were muddled in with other topics, so I wanted to just make a simple how-to type of video for anyone who just literally needs that information. Now I'm going to be covering a lot of topics and categories, so feel free to skip around to the ones that you would find helpful. If you have any questions or comments, or just want to drop a simple thank you or how are you doing, feel free to do that in the comments down below. I do read through the comments, so those are always really appreciated. I do like the comments. I sometimes get comments that say, I really appreciate how normal you are. And I guess that's like a compliment that, you know, you guys feel open to talk to me or have discussions with me via this channel, so that's always appreciated. Now, I am not an expert in the entertainment industry in Korea, but I do have some insight now, having lived here for quite a few years and having a lot of friends in this industry. I don't have all of the information, but I do have some information, having recently gone to become a full-time content creator and model here in Korea. So hopefully this information can help someone. First and foremost, what is an E6 visa? An E6 visa is an entertainer visa. So essentially any job requiring you to be in front of the camera or related to media. So if you want to be a model, if you want to be a hand model, if you want to be a dancer, if you want to be a singer, if you want to be an idol, if you want to be an influencer, if you want to be a TikToker, if you want to be a TV personality, any of those things for a foreigner would have to be covered under this visa. Under this visa, you cannot take any jobs not related to media or entertainment, which means under this visa, you're not allowed to work a standard office job at a company. You're not allowed to be an English teacher under this visa. You strictly have to be in the entertainment field. So I get a lot of questions asking, I'm from this country, or I'm this type of person, can I be an entertainer? In terms of who can physically get this visa, technically, it's any foreigner. Any foreigner qualifies for this visa. Now, that is not to say you can just get this visa because you're a foreigner. There are obviously a bunch of caveats to this. But generally speaking, any foreigner who wants to work in entertainment has to get this E6 visa. I get a lot of questions asking, do I need to speak Korean to get this visa? The answer is no. You don't need to speak Korean to get this visa. Would it be helpful for you to speak Korean for you to live while on this visa? Of course. It's helpful for you to learn Korean, period, if you want to live in Korea. You don't need to necessarily be super fluent or, you know, be able to speak like a native speaker. That is not the case, but I always highly recommend people who want to move to Korea, as a general rule, to learn some basic Korean at the very least. You should learn how to read Hangul. You should learn how to have the basic phrases and expressions that you need to kind of just live your life here. And that requires, I think, a quite minimal amount of effort on your part. So that is something I recommend to anyone before moving to Korea, just as a word of caution and advice. Now, I will say, if you want to be specifically like an actor or singer here in Korea, then I would highly suggest for you to learn as much Korean as possible. You are able to get roles without knowing Korean, but, you know, for example, the guy from Squid Games, he was able to get his role because he spoke Korean fluently. So it's never going to be a disadvantage for you to not know how to speak Korean. And at the same time, for any of these professions, like whether you want to come as an influencer or dancer or model or whatever, it's just going to help you because you're going to be able to make conversation and make those professional connections. The other thing for coming here and joining the entertainment industry, it's going to be helpful if you have some sort of clout. And, you know, in this day and age, it is what it is, right? If you have a large social media following, if you have a a lot of friends in this industry. That's just going to help you in your cause. I want people to start thinking about, when they're thinking about joining this industry, do you have a portfolio in general? If you are a model, do you have a variety of headshots or pictures, and not just like, you know, simple things on your Instagram? I mean like actual headshots and pictures taken that can show your professionalism, that can show your sales point, if you will. If you're an actor, do you have a reel ready? Do you have experience at working at your local play or anything like that? I mean, it's just like any job, really. No one's gonna wanna hire you if you don't have any experience or anything to offer. Even with an entry-level position at like a basic company, you're gonna need to try and spin your internship that you did 2 summers ago into making it work and fit for this job. So it's kind of the same thing, I think, when it comes to entertainment. You don't necessarily need a lot of experience or professional experience, but you do need to have things that you can reference to prove why you would be good at this job. Because any agency that's willing to sign you without having looked at you or looked at your portfolio, to me, I wouldn't really trust them, and I would think they're just kind of shady and gonna scam me. So think about it from that perspective. It doesn't matter necessarily what race, you know, your country of origin. You might not necessarily fit kind of the body stereotype of like the skinny, put together, pristine, sugar cut image that you have in mind for what people want, but that's not to say you don't have a role to play. Sometimes with entertainment here in Korea, in terms of those stereotypes, I'm going to be honest, it is easier if you are maybe someone who's white and skinny and blonde or whatever, because you fit kind of the Korean identity of a foreigner. But I know plenty of people who don't fit into that stereotype and who don't fit into that mold who do get work as well. I have to say, in the general landscape of entertainment, there's not as much work as you think there is. So I want you to keep that in mind as well. It's not going to be a constant flow of people asking for you, because there's a very small number of entertainment jobs in Korea. In my personal opinion, you are coming in new to this industry, so you're gonna need to kind of fight for your piece of pie, if you know what I mean. So in that sense, it's always better to kind of make it that you kind of can have an edge in, and it's only going to be more helpful if you have a portfolio or something to show for it. Okay, so now we're going to get into how to actually get this E6 visa. So there's going to be 2 types of people under this category. It's going to be people who don't live in Korea currently, who want to move to Korea, and people who are already living in Korea who want to make that transition. So first I'm going to talk about the people who are living abroad right now. If you are living abroad, there's kind of 3 ways you can go about getting this visa. The first is to sign with an agency while you're abroad, and that is basically just sending out emails to various agencies asking them if they want to hire you and sign with you. Personally, I would not recommend this route, and I would not go about this route because they're probably going to scam you in the long run. The second way to do it is what people would normally do, is they would get a tourist visa, come to Korea for the 3 months, and then network and learn the landscape and learn who they need to talk to, XYZ, and make those connections. But however, with current circumstances with COVID, Korea is not giving out tourist visas at the time, but you know, keep an eye out, and later when the country does open up, this is definitely a better option for you. Third option is to come here on a student visa or a working holiday visa, and kind of that same process of coming here and learning the landscape of the industry and then making those connections. Please do not come here as an English teacher and then try to transition into entertainment if you are not going to take your job seriously as an English teacher. I just want to stress that. You know, don't come here planning to be an English teacher for 2 months and then like cutting it loose and then switching to the entertainment industry. That is just irresponsible. I don't want to promote that kind of immature behavior, so I'm just gonna put that out there right now. And then if you are currently living in Korea and you want to make that transition, because I've had a lot of messages about that, so there's 2 ways you can go about it. The first is to make a visa run, which is what people normally used to do. You would go to another country and then apply for your entertainment visa while you were like taking a quick vacation over to Thailand or Japan or Vietnam or whatever. Because of COVID, this has made things a little bit more difficult and a little bit more complicated. So what I did, for example, is I was on an E2 visa, which is an English teaching visa. You can't switch from an E2 teaching visa straight into an E6 visa. I don't know why it's not allowed. You're not allowed to do it that way. You have to switch from an E2 visa to a D10 visa, which is a looking for work visa. And then while you're on the D10 visa, you can then apply to switch to the E6 visa, the entertainment visa. This takes a longer time period because you're switching to 2 visas, and visa processing times take a long time. So you have to obviously make the appointment at immigration, which is harder to come by these days because they don't have as many spots open at immigration. So make sure you get your immigration appointment very, very far in advance. Then you're going to want to switch to the D10 visa, which is going to take another month with like processing and just getting the visa XYZ. And then you're going to need to switch to the E6 visa, which is a whole other time frame. So it takes longer, but it's kind of what you have to do. The next part of all of this, well, one of the initial parts of all of this is finding an agency to sponsor you. So this is kind of the hardest question and hardest step, in my personal opinion, of getting an entertainment visa, is not just finding an agency to sponsor you, but finding one you like and finding one that's not going to cheat you out of everything. My word of advice here is to look through social media, Instagram, SNS, and it's actually not that hard to find agencies through Facebook or through Instagram. They're not hard to find. If you're really looking to make this transition into the industry, you should be able to exert that effort and put in that footwork to find agencies that way. I personally don't recommend ever signing with an agency that does not want to meet you beforehand, because they just clearly are not that interested in you. Now, another thing I want to note is to make sure that you're doing these things in a very mindful manner. So obviously there's going to be talents and entertainers and influencers XYZ who you know are here on an entertainment visa. Do not message them and just say, hey, what's your agency? What's your company? Can I join? Can you like recommend me? That is very rude, first off, and also just not what you should be doing. People are not going to recommend you to an agency, especially their personal agency, because you ask them to. It's like, honestly, with any job, if I worked at a company and a total stranger came up to me and said, hey, can you recommend me to work at your company? That would be crazy. Just think about it in that kind of sense. You don't know each other's personal background. You don't know if they're actually good people. You don't know their professional experience. You don't know if they would actually be a benefit to the agency or to the company. It's literally like with any job, you would maybe recommend your friend who you know and who you know their like professional background, but you wouldn't recommend a total stranger. And even with friends, you know, it's not always the best idea to work with your friend. You might like your friend in a personal setting, but you don't know anything about your friend in a professional setting. So I think it's just keep all that in mind when you're approaching someone, because a lot of people obviously don't know a lot about the industry and they don't have any professional connections. When that happens, I think it's more appropriate to message someone and say, hey, I've heard about this agency. I've reached out to them. They want to meet me, but have you heard anything about them? Is there anything that I should be cautious about? Have you heard any good news from them? You know, that is much more professional and a much more mature way to tackle that situation, because it shows that, one, you've obviously tried and put in the groundwork yourself, and two, you're asking a very sensible question. People would give you their honest opinion about what they've heard. If they haven't heard about it, then they haven't heard about it. There's plenty of agencies out there who, you know, people have never touched base with, so, you know, can't speak for anything. It's about kind of politely asking about certain things in a way that people would be willing to answer. All right, let's talk agencies. This is very, I don't know why I keep pointing. This is very crucial, because agencies are the companies who are going to sponsor your visa, and they're going to vouch for you to the government and say, hey, we believe in this talent. They're going to be able to contribute back into Korean society, and they're really important. An agency and a talent, they need to have a mutually beneficial relationship, right? An agency is going to support you on your visa, and you should be able to get jobs, and both of you can come out for the better because there's going to be a financial benefit both sides. Now, most agencies here in Korea are going to take a visa processing fee, and that's usually between 1 to 3 million won. If it's any more than that, then that's just ridiculous. That's literally a scam, so don't do that. Some agencies, although very rarely, will not charge you a visa processing fee. If an agency does not charge you a visa processing fee, then they are probably super legit, and they must really like you. For the most part, companies will charge you something, and that is technically illegal, but no one bats an eye to it, and it's very standard procedure. So an agency that does charge you a fee does not mean they're not legitimate, if you know what I mean. Some agencies, you can negotiate fees. So I know someone who negotiated from a 3 million visa processing fee down to a 1 million processing fee. Honestly, 3 million to me is a little bit outrageous. Like, I think somewhere kind of reasonable is between 1 and 2 million, but you know, keep in mind that's going to be upfront, that you're gonna have to pay the agency and you're not gonna get that back. Now, usually what that goes into is getting the lawyer, because they have to pay the lawyer, and then also a lot of times the agency will take part of that as well to just keep for them. Also keep in mind, to actually get the visa and immigration, I believe it's like 170,000 won for the actual visa fee at immigration. Agencies will take about 30 to 50% of whatever income you make, and I know that sounds crazy because in America agencies take between 10 to 20%, but in Korea it's anywhere from 30 to 50%. I think an agency that's taking 50% is absolutely outrageous. Personally, I would never go with an agency like that, but I know a lot of people who do because they just need a visa. So this is really up to your discretion. Depending on how much clout you have, you can probably negotiate certain conditions, but that's up to you and your negotiation skills, and if you're willing to make certain sacrifices here and there. When you're given the actual contract, keep in mind the actual contract will always be in Korean. There's no English version of the contract, so make sure you have someone who can help you proofread it and make sure there's nothing crazy in there and any red flags that you need to look out for in those contracts. Also, a fun fact, in Korea, when you sign contracts, you have to sign every single page. That's just something I never really thought about, because in America, we basically sign maybe the last page and then maybe a page in the middle, but in Korea, they sign every single one. Now, why your agency is really important, because your agency is responsible for getting you this letter of recommendation or letter of approval from the Ministry of Culture here in Korea. You absolutely need this letter in order to get approval for your visa. So that's part of the whole visa processing fee. This is why your portfolio comes in handy, because they're gonna send your paperwork along with your portfolio to the Ministry of Culture, and their Ministry of Culture is gonna see all these documents and then see your value as an entertainer. So they're gonna see like, okay, this person has been able to do the X, Y, and Z, so they should be able to get work and contribute back to the culture of the entertainment industry here in Korea. That's kind of like the most important document you need when getting your visa approved. So for you, the documents that you need to provide to your agency are your residency card, your ID card, your housing contract with your name on it, and your portfolio. So everything else the agency will be providing and creating to send over to the Ministry of Culture for approval, and then for immigration to approve. If you do not have a housing contract, I believe there's a way to say if you were living with a friend or something, they can vouch for your place of residence, but it needs to be longer than 6 months if you do have a housing contract. I don't know how it works if someone has to vouch for where you're living, because I already lived in my apartment. I don't really know the steps for that, but you can maybe do a quick Google search. If you don't live in Korea, I'm sure it's like your passport or something that you would need to provide them. But if you're already living in Korea, you just provide them your ARC card. Pretty simple. You don't really provide anything else. Everything else should be taken care of by your agency in terms of those documents. Now, here's the most important point of agencies that I want to stress to everyone here. In America, for example, when you have an agency, they're always going to be trying to get you work, because obviously the more work you have, the more money they make. In Korea, this is absolutely not the case. I've talked to so many people here in entertainment, and all of them have told me that their agencies have never been helpful at finding them work. They might be able to get you the rare occasional gig, but for the most part, everyone has had to hustle on their own. So if you expect to come to Korea and have your agency help you find all these jobs, you are sorely mistaken. And I hate to be the messenger of bad news, but that is literally how it is. So that's why it took me a really long time to even make this step into the industry, because I was always really concerned that if I could possibly make a living for myself this way. The entertainment industry is very unstable. Some months you might have a ton of jobs, other months you might have no jobs, or you just might not have any jobs. And it's a risk, and it's a big risk. You know, I want you to keep in mind all of that before you jump right in here, because it sounds really exciting, but at the same time, you know, will you be able to find work for yourself? I spent a long time trying to understand that and trying to think about if I could provide for myself if I was on this visa. And I've spent a few years in Korea, and I've made a lot of connections here in Korea, and I felt comfortable that I was going to be able to at least make sustainable income, and then potentially more income later on. But if you're just fresh to Korea, you don't know anybody, it's going to be very difficult. So again, that's why I said having a portfolio is only going to help you, having experience is only going to help you, and having clout is only going to help you. And as shallow as that last one seems, it is just so true to the cause. You want to build up anything that you can in order to make yourself valuable as an entertainer. Okay, let's talk about timelines. So from obviously the time it takes you to find an agency and confirm the contract XYZ, that's going to be very ambiguous and variable from person to person, so I can't really speak on that. For me personally, I was already teaching while I was thinking about making the transition, so I wasn't in a total rush to find an agency, so I kind of just took my time, and I went to a few interviews, and I ran to all these meetings, and it was really chaotic, but I took it slow and steady, if you know what I mean, because my contract wasn't up yet, so I knew I had time to do it. Now, let's say you've secured your agency, you've confirmed your contract conditions. Keep in mind that even after you've confirmed the contract yourself, the agency still needs to get that letter of recommendation from the Ministry of Culture, and that whole process can take anywhere from 1 to 2 months depending on your agency, but at minimum it's usually a month. And then after you get your letter from the agency for approval, you will go to immigration and you will apply for approval from immigration for your visa. Now that will take at minimum a month just for processing and getting your card and everything. So think about this. For 2 to 3 months, you're going to be completely unemployed and unable to work here in Korea, because you cannot work unless you have a proper visa, and you will either be on a tourist visa or a D10 visa or whatever visa you're on that is not an entertainment visa, so you cannot work at that time. So 2 to 3 months you will be completely unemployed and unable to bring in income. So you need to have money saved for that time. And even right after you get your visa, it does not necessarily mean you'll be able to get work right away. And even if you do get work right away, they don't necessarily pay you right away. Some entertainment jobs, they pay you a few weeks later, a month later. Sometimes you have to really ask them for it. So, you know, I personally would buffer your finances for at least 6 months and make sure that you have enough to live and eat and sustain yourself for 6 months without having any income at all. That sounds really drastic, but it is very possible that you might end up in a situation where you can't work for 6 months. And then in terms of like budgeting for that time frame, how much should you budget? Well, let's think. If you are living in pretty standard villa, office-style, one-room housing, it can be anywhere from 500 to 700,000 won per month. If you are living in a gochuan, which is kind of a really tiny, small student study one room, it's probably, I actually don't know how much those are, but it's definitely a lot less. So if you're really on a budget, that's probably a good bet of somewhere you can live. It's not comfortable, but it is cheaper, so that's always an option. But say you like rent a one-room apartment, for example, it's going to be anywhere from 500 to 700,000 won. After that, you're going to have to pay for utilities, so water, gas, electric. That can be, you know, let's rough estimate 100,000 won a month. It might be less, but during winter, for example, it was really cold in my house, so my heating bill was a lot more. It's just a safe estimate. If you live in an office tower, it's gonna be more expensive. Next, you're gonna have phone and Wi-Fi. You absolutely need your phone because you're gonna need to contact the people you need to contact for work. Maybe you can go without Wi-Fi in your apartment. Personally, I can't because of my job. So, you know, that's gonna be a roughly $150,000 a month. Next, you're gonna need to eat, right? So groceries and food, let's budget $200,000 a month. You know, that obviously is going to vary depending on how well you can budget and what you eat. If you go on a pure ramen only diet for 6 months, it's obviously going to be a lot cheaper. Next, you're going to need health insurance here in Korea. This is non-negotiable. You absolutely have to 100% pay this. You cannot get out of it. So that's going to be an extra $140,000 a month. And then throw in just kind of like miscellaneous emergency funds, another $200,000 a month. So that's kind of what I would budget per month, and then times that by around 6 months or more if you can, and that's how much you should have prepared before, you know, thinking about transitioning. So I think I was able to cover everything. Again, if you have any specific questions, if you have any things that you just want to tell me or update me on in your life, or want to throw a quick thank you so much for these videos, I would really appreciate that. But again, I just wanted to make this really comprehensive video to hopefully get all that information out there, because I do get a lot of questions and I wanted to kind of be able to direct people to something that felt a bit more tangible and a bit more helpful to them, and hopefully this was it. I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!